This is the Last of Us podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 6, The Price.
I need you to not turn around.
No. You can't do this to me. Joel.
If you have last words for her, I'll pass them along.
Last words for her? No, I need her last words. For me. I'm dying. I'm terrified. I don't need a view. I need Gail. To see her face, please. Please let that be the last thing I see.
If you love someone, you can always see their face.
Welcome back, fellow survivors, to the Last of Us podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about the penultimate episode of Season 2, Episode 6, The Price. I am one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow survivors. I am your other host, John. Yes, welcome to The Price is Right.
Well, yes, or the second Last of Us as the penultimate episode of the second season of the show.
Indeed.
Did you hear Craig Mazin apparently this week has said that they can't complete the story in 3 seasons, that they have to have a 4th season to complete the story?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I know they'd always said that they'd spread the second game over at least 2 seasons, but I didn't imagine it was going to be over 3 seasons.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I guess structurally, complexity maybe around it, that there is a need for 3 seasons for the second game.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that I guess in that sense, the first season is possibly a little simpler in terms of its story arc.
Yeah. And really, that's really focused on 2 characters in the first game, and they expanded on that a lot to fill out the first season, episodes with characters that didn't appear in the game at all. And in the second season, we're seeing a lot of expansion already happening. So I think they could easily expand it out to 3 seasons.
As long as the quality remains as it is now, I'm all for a 4th season of The Last of Us, to be honest. Because, I guess as we get into our spoiler-filled discussion, well, I really, really enjoyed this episode.
This was fabulous, wasn't it?
A real quality, character-driven, tough old emotional stuff here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going from the good times to happy times to growing pains, to that divergence and the bittersweetness of what happens on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So can't wait to get into our spoiler-filled discussion, fellow survivors.
Absolutely. But before we do, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please pop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe on any immune or infected podcast player of your choice. We do want to hear your thoughts as we get to the final episode of the season. Please email us into feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com, or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. And a reminder, the second season of our World's End pub quiz is continuing. We have another question coming up later on in this episode. That'll be the 6th of 7, and at the end of the season, email us in with the correct answers to all 7 questions, and you could be in with a chance of getting your hands on The Last of Us Part 2 for PlayStation or for PC, or a €50 Amazon voucher for the country of your choice.
Yes, so fellow survivors and of course fellow quizzers, get those answers coming in after the 7th episode to be in with a chance for those goodies. But I think with that, Derek, what are some of the episode details of The Last of Us Episode 6 of Season 2, The Price?
Well, of course, it's based on the 2020 PlayStation game The Last of Us Part 2 by Neil Druckman and Halley from game publisher Naughty Dog. The show is written and executive produced by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckman. And this episode was written for television by Craig Mazin, Neil Druckman and Halley Gross, two of the game writers on board here for this penultimate episode as well. So along with Craig Mazin, who's written all the episodes so far this season. So a really important episode as it spans so much time in between the end of the first game and the start of season 2, or start of the game as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting choice, isn't it, actually, to bring the original creators of the game and the writers of that game into these areas where it's building on the game.
Exactly.
Yeah, so really good choice there.
It's almost, there's so much that's actually translated from the game directly that it's almost like if you left off one of their writing credits on this, it wouldn't be right, because they wrote exactly the scenes, exactly the lines in the game itself. So it makes sense to have them on board to tool them into the show itself as well. So yeah. And this episode is directed by Neil Druckman. He wasn't going to come back and direct an episode for the second season of The Last of Us, but felt this would be the episode that he would direct if he's going to direct any, this episode with all about Joel and Ellie, really. So great to have him directing this one.
Yeah, really good stuff. Yeah.
So, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 6, The Price?
Sure. Soon after moving into Jackson, Joel tries to make Ellie's 15th birthday special, as he gives her a hand-restored guitar and a vanilla birthday cake for Eli. But after recovering from attempting to burn the bite mark from her arm, Ellie asks Joel to sing to her, agreeing that he doesn't suck. A year later, while Ellie's mind is firmly on getting out to patrol around Jackson, Joel insists that she take it slowly, trains with Jesse and learns the ropes as he surprises her with a visit to a museum to fulfill her dream of going to space. But after her amazing birthday, Ellie still has something on her mind. Another year on, and Ellie is growing up faster than Joel would like. She's smoking weed, kissing girls, and getting a tattoo to cover her burned arm. But Joel just wanted her to stay the same. He eventually concedes that Ellie needs her own space and arranges for her to move out to the garage. By the time of her 19th birthday, Ellie wants to confront Joel about what really happened at Salt Lake City all those years ago. But when Joel takes her on her first patrol, she forgets all about it, as her reconnaissance of the woodland finds only a pair of amorous squirrels. After the uneventful start to the patrol, Joel is sent as an emergency backup for Adam and Eugene, who have gotten into trouble with some infected. Ellie insists on going with Joel, but when they arrive, Adam is already dead and Eugene has been bitten. Eugene just wants to see his wife Gail one last time before he dies. Ellie has Joel promise he'll keep Eugene alive while she goes to retrieve their horses, but despite this, Joel executes the infected man. An upset and betrayed Ellie realizes this isn't the first time Joel has lied to her, and tells Gail what Joel really did to her husband before separating herself from him. 9 months later, after Joel tries to defend her at the New Year's Eve dance, Ellie finally confronts Joel and learns all about Salt Lake City, and that he did what he did because he loves her. She doesn't know if she can forgive him, but now that she knows the truth, she would like to try. But this is the last conversation the two will have, as within 24 hours, Joel will be dead, murdered at the hands of Abby. Back in present-day Seattle, following her brutal torture of Nora, Ellie returns to the theatre where Jesse and Dina are waiting for her.
Excellent. What did you think of the structure of this one, John, before we get into our major points from the episode? What did you think of this idea of jumping from one March to another March every year to celebrate Ellie's birthday?
I just think it's a really, really nice way of structuring it for a start. Yeah. Like, I'm all about the structure of things in a lot of cases, because I think you can really, it forms the basis of, a book or of a TV show, of a series, however you play around with it. And I just think it's a really important moment in the life of Ellie, but also the life of Joel, with the fact that Ellie is this surrogate daughter. Yeah. So it puts an emphasis, either if things are going good, things are great on a birthday. If the strains it gets potentially a little bit more awkward and so on. And I do like the way it kind of evolves. The first birthday, you know, when she's 15, that it's good times all the way through to where really you get this gradual sort of growing pains and divergence as she becomes more independent, but also wants to understand this niggle that is playing in her mind about Salt Lake City. And that strain is what blows up the birthday, in effect. You know? So,
and there's a couple of things I really like about it as well. You know, we're talking about the period of time from when Ellie and Joel move into Jackson and they have their own home together. So this is the first time they're really a family. They're not on their mission anymore. They've settled down and they've got their roots here. So every year we're checking in with them. I think that's a great part of the structure, as you say. But the other thing I really like is that on every single situation, Joel has an intent that he's coming to, you know, celebrate her birthday, to do something special for Ellie. And he's missing something going on in Ellie's life. She's focused on something else every single year. And only occasionally does he realize what she's focused on when he's trying to just celebrate her birthday and have time with her as a kid, and she's focused on other things outside of it, which we'll get to as we go through each of the years. But yeah, really, really great idea. And again, this is something very similar to how it plays out in the game as well. This is these years go by as you play through this time with Joel. It's great to have Pedro Pascal back. Obviously,
definitely.
After we lost Joel earlier on in the season,
there's some really amazing emotional scenes here and double acts between Joel and Ellie.
Yeah.
For me, Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey here together are just a tour de force.
Oh, brilliant.
And I mean, we'll come to it as we go through each of the moments, but it's just really, really superbly done, I think.
You're totally right with that, John. Let's get into our moments from the episode. Let's start out with the flashback sequence for this episode. I'm almost convinced now that sequence at the start of last week's episode is supposed to be a flashback episode, because every single episode has had a flashback at the start of it this season, unlike last season. Everything has gone back a few years.
Yeah.
So here in this flashback sequence, we get some time back in 1983 in Austin, Texas, with the young brothers, Tommy and Joel. Tommy, once again, in trouble. It just reminds me that in that first episode of The Last of Us Season 1, how it opens is Tommy's in prison and Joel has to go and help him out. Here we are in Season 2, Episode 6, the penultimate episode of Season 2, and we've got Tommy getting himself into trouble once again, and Joel being the one that has to save him. He's going to take the blame for it because apparently their father is very violent and is going to take the belt out on Tommy, and Tommy doesn't want to get punished for the thing he actually did. So Joel's going to take the punishment for him. He's saying to him, I'll explain it to him. You go into the room when Dad gets home. I'll sort it out. And that leads to a really interesting conversation with Joel and his dad.
Yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed the scene, and I think I really enjoyed it because of the dynamic of the conversation about someone realizing where and how he was brought up, and realizing that he needs to sort of do something better than what his father had done, or what Tommy and Joel's grandfather had done to him.
Yeah.
Not that he's perfect, not that he is saying, I'm not going to sort of discipline my child with a belt or a slipper or a smack or whatever it is, but not to the point where, as he says, he has a broken jaw. That's not sort of a disciplining, that is a full-on punch that he describes that his grandfather gave to him that broke his jaw.
Yeah.
It was wired shut for 2 months. And this is the story he tells, and he goes, maybe I go too far, but I don't know, but I'm doing a bit better than my father did. When it's your turn, I hope you do a little bit better than me.
Yeah. It's just that tiny increment that he talks about.
Yeah,
that's probably what's so frustrating and what works so well in the conversation. He's trying to justify the fact that his kids are terrified of doing anything wrong because they'll get beaten by him. And that's what makes it such a difficult conversation. Joel's dad here is saying, look, I don't always get it right, but at least I'm a little better than my father. I never broke your arm. I never broke your face. I never broke your jaw. So I'm doing a little better. And I know I might not always be right. But Joel's response to him going, but you know what it's like. you understand what it's like. How can you do this to us if you know what we're going through? And he's going, but you didn't go through what I went through back then. Everybody knew for 2 months when my jaw was wired shut that the reason that was wired shut was because I stole some candy and my father broke my jaw. You'll never experience that. So
Absolutely.
I'm a little better than my dad was, and hopefully you'll be a little better than I am. And it's not taking responsibility, but it's also saying, at least I'm not as bad as what I had to put up with. It's that attitude of, well, I'm slightly better than the previous generation, but not learning enough that I'm a great dad, you know?
I mean, yeah, I just like the back and forth, because I do think, we kind of look going, we want it to be perfect. We want it done now. But I think a lot of things in life are incremental. I'm not saying that his dad is right to have that view, but if it gets to Joel being the good father, where he doesn't hit, that incrementality, sometimes just passes through the system, and it's that collective effort of little increments. It is, as much as laws being passed or more widespread societal view, but that's ultimately what leads to it, is that little by little, the idea that violence is a good means of disciplining children, and what level that is, gets reduced. And I think, so in a sense, he's wrong, but there's an element of right in him that's coming out as well. And I really like that, because I do think it's a really complex story it is often overlooked, in these tales. It's just that he's bad. I mean, the interesting thing is he doesn't hit them in this case. He's had that conversation. So maybe after that it changes. And I think the other side of this that's really interesting is that on the flip side is the scene is so incredibly tense. Like, I think when he gets up to go for the beers in the fridge, I just thought I was going to clip him, hit him. All the time, the tension that really plays through with this as to whether he's going to beat Tommy. The other side of it is, I guess, being in the police, that side of it is an interesting dynamic in this situation. In that he does ask, what have you done? He does give them the opportunity to say the truth, and he lies, and he knows that. So, I mean, the other side of it is, like, I guess, is that element as well. I've spoken to the colleagues that picked up the guy that you hit, and I've spoken to him. Don't treat me like a fool.
Exactly.
I'm not coming in here half baked around, what's happened. I know what's happened. I want you to tell me the truth. And it's interesting, and I think this whole point here, and this flashback, it resonates to, I guess, what ultimately is our final point of this podcast around the 9 months later, around the incremental change, but also the fact that you have Joel telling the truth but it's being forced out of him again, this time by Ellie, not necessarily his father.
Well, exactly. I suppose in a more simplistic way, it really resonates with everything that Joel's gone through. He's someone that has lied multiple times and will continue to lie. That's kind of something that's been built into his character all the way from back when he was a kid. Even though his father's a police officer, knew what happened, he still lied to his face to him. And so that's something that continued on for the rest of his life until he eventually changes his mind and finally tells the truth, which we will get to later on. But what a great performance here from Tony Dalton, who plays his father. This is the second time this year we've talked about Tony Dalton. He was in Daredevil Born Again playing the Swordsmaster. Once again, he played that role in Marvel's Hawkeye as well. So seeing him twice this year in two very different roles is really interesting. But what great casting. He feels like he could be the father of Pedro Pascal.
Definitely. It's just so well done. I found it fascinating, and I think the fact that it links to that final emotional moment as well is just a point of of genius, really, for me. I really like that bookending of this episode with this flashback and then, you know, in a sense, the flashback to New Year's Eve that we saw at the start of this second season. But I think it's a real fascinating dynamic around family dynamics, around the use of, you know, physical disciplining, around the idea of saying, you know, of lying, telling the truth as opposed to trying to cover it up, and just the difficult generational struggles that I guess families can have. You know, and again, we see that, you know, around the 19th birthday point that we'll come to, you know, the difficulties there for Joel.
Exactly.
So it's just a really great opening, and it weirdly sets up, you know, other aspects throughout this journey through the birthdays.
Yeah, and something that we didn't see in the game. We never saw any kind of flashbacks to the youth of Joel. We never saw any information about what he was like when he was a kid or about his father. So a new added piece for the show here, which really liked it as a flashback.
I think the other quick interesting thing before we go on to our next point is that Joel is back in the opening credits.
Yes, he is.
So there are two fun guys representing Ellie and Joel there.
Yeah, I suspect that's the last time we're going to see that in the opening credits, unfortunately. I think from now on it'll just be the one. But yes, great to see that back just for this episode, as it's all about Joel and Ellie's relationship. Let's go on to our point number one then, since we had a flashback point there. Let's go on to point number one, which is Ellie's 15th birthday. So as I mentioned earlier on, this is just a couple of months, I think 2 months after they moved into Jackson Hole. It starts out with Joel going to the bar, Seth, the bar owner, who plays a pivotal role towards the end of the story. But he's behind the bar and he's going to be making a birthday cake for Ellie in exchange for some Lego that Joel's been able to source. Just like that little moment when Joel says to him where he found it, and Seth says, I wasn't able to find it. I checked all those houses before. And he goes, yeah, but I'm a smuggler. I know exactly where people put stuff. And you're a whatever you are. And Seth goes, well, I was a police officer before.
Yeah, I wasn't a bartender.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, a little bit of a cops and robbers kind of thing between the two of them there, maybe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely. It was a great little vibe, actually, to see Seth here. I like the fact that as well, he goes, oh, I need something else from you. You've got a lot of that. Because he also gets a bone, which he uses then to craft this new string bridge for the guitar. And I really enjoyed this. You know, one of our questions was about some of the different animals that had been carved from wood by Joel. So here we see Joel in action crafting this new string bridge for the guitar from the bone, cleaning up the guitar as well as personalizing the guitar with the carving of a moth into the arm of the guitar. So I thought this was really nicely done. And then you have it kind of being interrupted with Ellie coming in pain because she's burnt her arms, because again, nice little nod backwards, and she just wants to wear short sleeves again. You know,
it's you know, these scenes are so good. You can see the love of Joel here, where he's refurbishing the guitar. You can, you know, all of the time he's putting into it. He wouldn't do that for anybody else. We know Joel Miller is not a person that does anything for anybody else at all, really. He does everything for himself until his heart was opened by Ellie. And here he is finally, when they've settled down, he's putting in all of this work for this beautiful birthday gift for her. I love that. And, you know, the fact they just took some time to watch him refurbish the guitar, I think was a beautiful choice. Absolutely loved watching it. And then, when Tommy comes back in with Ellie and her burnt arm, I love that she's completely out of it. She's been put on painkillers, pain meds to take care of the pain that she's put herself through. But the way she describes it, where she was standing over a hot pot and then kind of just made this decision and then just did it. You know, how did this happen? Well, I said I was going to do it, and then I did it. That's basically how it happened. It
smells like pork.
Yes. Well. And the reason she's doing it is because for the entirety of her life, since she got bitten at 13 years old, she's had to cover up her arm in case somebody saw this bite mark and killed her, because instantly you would think if someone's bitten, they're going to turn. And no matter what they say to you, they're usually dead before they get any words out at all. So Ellie's gone through her entire life for the last 2 or 3 years having to hide this so that nobody questions her, and now she's burning her arm to try and cover up that scar that she has, that mark that she has.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do like that it comes back a bit later where he says, he understands why she did it in the end.
Exactly.
So that was kind of a nice little sort of moment there as well.
And this is what I meant back at the start of this. This continues throughout each of the years. Ellie is focused on something else and Joel's not aware of it. Joel and herself haven't sat down to talk about how she feels with the bite in her arm. She's just gone and done it without talking to him. So in this year, this was what she was focused on. He was focused on getting a beautiful guitar and not a great birthday cake, but a birthday cake all the same.
Well, the birthday cake's great. It's happy 15th birthday, Eli. Yes. I love that they say, I hope Seth bakes better than he spells, as he goes to get a knife, but Ellie's just dug into the cake straight off with her hands, and she's like, oh, he does. And he gets the guitar for her as well.
It's a little reference that her digging into the cake is a little reference to when they first went to Jackson Hole, and she was literally throwing all of the food into her mouth, not using any utensils at all. And they were saying she just ate like a wildling, basically. And here she is 2 months later, still going in with her hands for food rather than waiting for a knife and fork.
So, and then she gets her guitar, the promise of lessons. But I have to say, I do like this kind of neck sequence for a number of reasons, where she asks Joel for a tune, because I like his awkwardness, where it's like, he's the person that does it privately more than anything else. He might do a bit of around the campfire action with it, but the guitar's this personal instrument for him to go through the songs that he likes. But I'm there then going, I know she's, as he reels off Pearl Jam's Future Days, and she goes, that didn't suck. It was lovely, absolutely. But I was just there, but why not Happy Birthday?
Yeah.
Like, it's her birthday. And whilst it didn't suck, it's quite the party kill. Like that. So
it's a beautiful moment.
No, it is. It is. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not, and I loved the scene, but the sort of my mischievous side of myself was like, why didn't you just do Happy Birthday?
I know.
And then I was like, well, we're going to party after that. Gee. Might go and burn my other arm after that.
No. I think it's an absolutely beautiful song, and it is all about the lyrics. It's all about what's in Joel's heart that he's singing through his voice and singing through the guitar. I can't remember whether we know from the game or whether we know from the show that Joel had said that what he'd always wanted to do with his life was to become a singer. He wanted to be in a band and he wanted to be a singer. He knows how to play guitar really well. So that's always been something he was interested in.
Yeah.
And this song is about, him being able to see the future days together, just the two of them. Now that they're settled down, have their own home, he's singing this song to her about the fact that he can see a future together. It wasn't that long ago that Joel was burning the body of a child.
Absolutely.
Who come into town. He'd lost all connection with humanity. He then lost everybody that he loved, and the only person left with him was Ellie, and then he killed for her. So now he's settled in a town with a house and can see the future days with her. I think it's a beautiful moment where he's just channeling that love directly out through the guitar with Ellie. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, but it's really interesting you say that. The fixation is on Ellie because in the town is his brother, and it kind of plays to that conversation that he has with Tommy's wife a bit later on, which we don't see originally in season 1. So that this is another perspective, point of view during that time at the dance on New Year's Eve, where she's kind of trying to remind him that you're our family as well.
Yeah, exactly.
We're family.
Well, that bit was closing out the conversation that Maria had with him in episode 1 of this season, where Maria said he was a refugee just like all the people he's trying to keep out of Jackson Hole because he doesn't feel they can build the town out quickly enough. And Maria's telling him, but you're one of our family. We will be, maybe I misspoke. I didn't mean to say something bad. We will always be here if you need us. Yeah. And at that point, she's comforting because of the separation from Ellie as well at that stage. So, but it is great to have those kind of pieces of conversations and pieces of relationships tied up as it goes on. But that's the first birthday that we see, Ellie's 15th birthday. Let's go on to probably my favourite, I think. 1 year later, point number 2, 1 year later, her 16th birthday, the sweet 16th birthday, John.
Yeah, again, just really good. And I mean, certainly the trip to the museum, the dinosaur statue,
so cool.
the whole space capsule, all straight out of the game.
Yeah.
They do stumble upon this.
Yeah.
In the game. So
well, it's exactly the same. It's Joel brings her here.
Yeah.
Joel has kept this a secret from her, found it, and decided these are things that he wants to give her as a celebration of her 16th birthday. A big thing in America, actually. The 16th birthday tends to be bigger than an 18th birthday in the US. So he wants to do something really special for her.
So it's really nice. I mean, it still evokes happy times here, and what he will do for Ellie as well. In a different way, it points to what he will do. The cassette tape that he gives her to help with the experience is like, you don't want to know what I had to do to trade to get that.
Yeah.
But equally, there is a memory triggered in this moment as well for Ellie that is then effectively going to bring them down the slope, into the trough, from this high of her 16th birthday, which is really, really good. Like, I really just like the thing of where he says, do you want to go into space? And gets into that, opens up the hatch and he goes, well, you're going to need a helmet, pick one.
Yeah.
Because when he went and picked up the rock, I was like, what's he doing? Yeah. But it's to smash the glass so she can pick one. So I just thought, I like that. I like that sort of slight displacement of what he means, I guess. Yeah. Really, I liked it a lot. I love the fact then that you get brought into Ellie's imagination, and with the cassette player, the Walkman, playing the countdown from the NASA mission, as you go to blast off. And it's just so well done, where you get lost in her imagination.
Yeah.
Her, in a sense, this almost idea of childlike imagination of what it's like to pretend to be going into space. Except she's in a real rocket capsule.
Yeah.
You've got the audio of NASA's countdown, and it's just really, really so well kind of just done. I mean, I was kind of beaming, thinking this is such a cool present. It would be great, to get something like that. Hint, hint, Derek. It just feels so real, and like it reminds me of my childhood memories of, the exploration of space that you kind of were told about through NASA and all that. So it was really, really good. Loved it.
Absolutely. And again, this is just another build on Joel's love for Ellie. This is another year on. They spent another year living together. And we learnt in season 1 about Ellie's love for space. She loves comic books that are set in space. That's the thing that she collected all the time. We know that she loves Sally Ride. That's the person that she loves most. And Sally Ride was an astronaut. So Joel's built out a picture of her over the course of this year of all the things she absolutely loves, and is taking her to this place which has all of those things and making it really special, even though it's very unlikely that humans in this world will ever get back to go to space again. He wants to give her this kind of experience, and I think is just fabulously put on screen. There's the balance between the two things as well. In the background, Ellie's talking to him about why can't she get out on patrol? She's really strong. She's able to fight like she was when the two of them were out on their own. On her 16th birthday, she's asking Joel for the present of being allowed to go out on patrol with a gun and go out and take care of infected. And Joel's able to clamp all that back down and put her into her special place where she's able to use her imagination to go out into space. Like, that's so cool that he's able to do that and get her back to that childhood wonder, exactly as you say, John. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I do like the awkward conversation as well as they go there, where Joel thinks that Jesse and Ellie are an item and they've got something going for one another. And he says, what about the birds and the bees? And you mean what? The dicks and vaginas? It's just so good. Absolutely. He's like, what the F? It's just that stumble and that turnaround, that look that he gives her when he hears that coming out of her mouth.
Yeah, I love that he says,
really
I've
good.
seen the way you look at Jesse. I know there's something between the two of you. I can tell these things. And Ellie just kind of looks at him going, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I promise you, I won't get pregnant if you allow me to train with Jessie, because she knows exactly who she is. She knows she's a lesbian. She knows she has no interest in Jessie at all. And she knows that that Joel can't see a thing, even though he's pretending that he can.
And that's another point, that part of her life, it's just cloudy for Joel.
Yeah, she's never talked about it. Yeah, she's never talked about the death of Riley and the fact that she had to kill her first girlfriend, the first person that she kissed, that she had to kill her. She's never told Joel that. So while he might be getting to know her really well and they are really, really close in these moments, there are bits that are separating them. And you mentioned it already, John, as they go home from this wonderful trip to the museum. Ellie's beaming. She's really delighted with herself, but then she sees fireflies over to her left and suddenly stops and goes very quiet. And Joel does notice it, but she doesn't say anything about it. But it is that moment of seeing fireflies and remembering a little bit what happened in Salt Lake City to the fireflies and not knowing what happened, I suppose.
Absolutely. And it's a great little sort of pause there as that kind of moment is triggered.
Yeah.
With seeing the fireflies. So really good.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we get on to the 17th birthday?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get on to another year on, John.
Yes, it's point 3, and it's another year later on Ellie's 17th birthday. And I think what's interesting here is we have this growing pains situation, ultimately, where you have Joel rocking back to their house with a cake, like he had done 2 years previously, but stumbling into something very, very different. And it's this growing pains, this idea for independence, and sort of moving apart because you're growing up, you have your own ideas, your own interests and so on, or you're doing your own thing ultimately. Yeah. And here I love the fact that, in the shock of it all, that Joel is kind of like, you did all the teenage things at once. Exactly. Drugs, tattoo, experimenting with girls, sex, all this, all happening at once. And it's kind of like this tsunami has rocked his world, that it's not this sweet, innocent Ellie that reminds him of the daughter that he's lost. Because she is frozen in time in his memory at that age. Yeah. Ellie is dynamic because she's getting older and older. And again, I think it's to the point of the birthday motif. It's like, this is no longer Sarah from season 1. Yeah. But that's what's frozen in the memory of what Sarah was.
And it's really interesting that you bring Sarah up, because in that first episode, it was Joel's birthday and he was supposed to be taking time off. He said he would definitely be home at a certain time to be with Sarah, to bring home cake with him. That was his job. He never brought home the cake to her. So here he is taking time off work. The reason why Ellie is disturbed at this moment is because he's supposed to be out on patrol, and he skipped patrol to have a surprise birthday with Ellie. Yeah. I absolutely love this fight. Because it's probably the fight that I had with my parents around this age as well, where the expectation of Joel is so much different to Ellie's actual life. The fact that he even says to her, you're experimenting with girls. Again, we know Ellie's long since known who she is. She knows she's a lesbian. She has had girlfriends before. She's not experimenting. She's fooling around just like anybody else would be, just happens to be with a person of the same sex. So that's the instant pushback. And then you have that phrase that parents around the world say, you're living under my roof. This is my house. These are my rules. And Ellie's pushback on that is fantastic in this situation, where it's like, no, it's not. It's our house. They gave us this house. You've done nothing for it. Both of us have an equal right to set the rules in this place.
Yeah, there's a really interesting sort of way an attack. It's like, we were given this by the community. This is not yours. this is ours and you've done nothing. You didn't, never bought it and so on. It's also as well, immediately after Kat has left and all that, and she goes, she runs through, I'm sorry I did that, except I'm not.
Yes.
Like, you want me to say that, but I'm not sorry for this. So you've got to change your viewpoint here as to why you're angry and what you will permit here.
Exactly. Now, Ellie, of course, is pushing boundaries. There are things that, of course, Joel should be pretty angry about her smoking weed in the house. That's probably not something that he's going to put up with anyway. But they do need to work together. And again, this is something really interesting. When they were on the road together, and it was Ellie and Joel side by side, there were moments that they became partners where they worked together and they were watching each other's backs the whole time they were on the road. Like, remember back in season 1, Ellie had to save Joel's life. Joel wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for Ellie. She had that responsibility of taking care of him until he got well again. And here she is being treated like a child when she feels she should be able to be the partner of Joel at this stage. The
and we
should be
have
treated
that
equally.
Conversation sort of explicitly stated later on, when Joel goes to rescue Eugene. So
Exactly.
It's a really good moment. But, as a result of all this, Ellie, sees that natural progression. Well, it's time for me to get a place of my own, which... because the garage is so bloody huge, it can be the garage.
I love that she tries to move out in the middle of the night, though.
And it's pouring down as well. Yeah, exactly.
Like, Joel kind of going, right, okay, just get the mattress inside. There's no point in going outside. There's no heating out there. It's raining outside. So it's just the absolute frustration of Ellie thinking that this person is trying to control everything that she does. She's trying to push back against it. But they do have a conversation. And then Joel kind of realizes, maybe I should give her own space. Maybe I should set up the garage so that she can move out there.
Yeah, and I just think, is this the little bit better than me element, where he does sort of just allow her that space, that's what he permits. I know in the first episode, there is that talk that, well, I did that and, maybe it was too much too soon. But in this moment, he does, through that conversation, go, well, yes, maybe you do need, but let me fix that up, so that you've got water, heat, light, because at the moment it doesn't. So I do kind of like that conversation, The other thing that comes out over this is that the tattoo that Kat is drawing on her is of a moth.
Yeah.
And he gradually gets the meaning of that moth with the conversation with Gail, which again, the psychologist, which is just superb.
It absolutely is. Like, Catherine O'Hara is just so fantastic. And I wonder how long she spent on set, because she gets, a moment here and there each episode. She gets a couple of minutes here and there. But I love how they drop her in. I love that. In last episode, we had Tommy, or the episode before, we had Tommy walking up to her while she was at the baseball game and sitting down beside her, having a beer, getting some psychotherapy from her. Here we have her reading her book in the coffee shop, and Joel walks up to her going, do you know anything about moths, about, dream theory about moths? Is it, is it about rebirth? Is it about moving on and changing? She's like, no. If you believe in that crap, like the stupider members of of my kind of medical profession.
Dreams, wasn't it? Yeah.
If you believe in that kind of crap, well, then moth means death. But
I like that there is the confusion here. So his kind of understanding dreams 101 is that it's actually a symbol of change, metamorphosis and growth. And she's like, well, no, that's a butterfly. A moth is a symbol of death. Of course, if you believe in that shit, effectively. So I like that. I do also like the initial sort of introduction there in the coffee shop where he comes up to her straight out the blue and she's like, do I have a Doctor In sign around my neck?
Like Lucy from Peanuts.
So really good. But ultimately what he learns here then, it's a darker meaning than what he thought it was. For him. It is about death, that she, not growth and change.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you saw the stuff that Ellie's packing up, some of her drawings when she's packing them up in her room, one of the drawings that she has, or one of the pages of drawings of moths, written on that is, you have a greater purpose. and that's something that plays out later on when she has her conversation with Joel. She believes that she could have had a greater purpose. Maybe she should have died at some point when she got bitten back in the past. So what's her greater purpose is kind of the thing she's struggling with. And I guess a lot of people struggle with that during their teenage years as well. What is my purpose? What am I here for as well? So that's what Ellie's going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get on to our fourth point. 2 years later this time, we have Ellie's 19th birthday.
Yeah, it seems like that move out to the garage has helped Ellie and Joel's relationship. She has her own space now.
Definitely.
She's not seeing him as much as she was in the past, really. But it does open here with Ellie thinking about Salt Lake City once again. This is now 5 years on from Salt Lake City.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, she wants to understand it, and she's writing down her thoughts. She's writing out the questions that she's wanting to understand from that moment in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And which in that moment is interrupted by Joel knocking on the door for this time on her 19th birthday. She has taken this advice of patience and so on and training to go on their first patrol together.
Yes.
And I do like the moment, those two on the road, in a sense, out on their own.
Yeah.
And he asks her if they can do more stuff like this because it's like before. It's almost like a nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely.
To where they were sort of on the road fighting for their life day in, day out. That camaraderie that happens as a result of that. And that by becoming sedentary, now he's that divergence, that drifting apart. He feels that possibly more acutely than Ellie. So
yeah, and I kind of get in the writing itself as well that it's not explicitly said, but we've said it. It's been 3 years since Ellie asked to go out on patrol.
Yeah,
and she's not been allowed by Joel. She's been prevented from going out on patrol. Yet 5 years ago, she was his partner out there on the road. The two of them side by side. Two of them had each other's backs. Two of them protecting each other on the road. And he's there going, wouldn't it be great if we could do this more often? And Ellie's probably going, but I've wanted to do this the whole time. And now you're telling me it's okay.
Yeah.
Because you're getting old and because you've been sitting at home on your own, or you've been going out on patrol with other people that you don't like. And now you're allowing me to come out here. So she is probably going, yes, finally I'm allowed to go out and patrol. She's ignoring all of his commands. Like, he's basically brought her on this simple loop out of the town and back in again, even though she's faced off against, sometimes hundreds of infected before. But he's taking on the simple road, say, get your binoculars out and look over there and see if you can see all of the points, check out your corners, all that kind of stuff. And Ellie's just ignoring everything he's saying, kind of going, I know all this stuff. She's very cocky, of course, as well, which always comes across. But I do like that, even though they don't say it, Ellie is probably going, yeah, I know this because we did it. We did it 5 years ago. I know it's nostalgic for you, but it's not for me. I should have been out here years ago when I asked you.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's just kind of so well done. And then, you get that moment of Fisher, that turning point where you have the radio message from HQ talking about another patrol that's headed by Adam and Eugene in difficulty, that have been pinned down from the infected. And you have Joel saying, Ellie, you go back to Jackson. I'm going off to see if they're all right. And she's like, this is where she says, no, I'm not your kid, Joel. I'm your effing partner. We stick together or we don't do it. It is that thing of, in a sense, as he's settled down, he's infantilized her again to the memory of what Sarah was, rather than, as you say, the fact that she was as much a part of them surviving to get to Jackson as he was. Yeah. So it's just a really sort of that great hinge point really here that happens with then them coming across the decimation ultimately of Eugene and Adam's patrol group.
Yeah. I love how this is laid out. You know, they leave the horses behind. The two of them are kind of creeping up, going, you know, what does Joel say? You're my back and I'm yours.
Yeah.
You know, where the two of them are kind of going back to back, effectively covering all the points as they get there. And then out of the distance, I think I wrote it down as Adam exits stage left, dragged by horse. I presume that was Adam.
Face down as well.
Yeah, just being dragged behind it, yeah.
I mean, it's really eerie because it comes out of the mist. It almost felt Headless Horseman type of thing.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's just because, you know, when you're in a forest, that the clicking, certainly like where it's echoey. So that sort of distant roaring of the infected that they hear as well is really eerie.
Yeah.
It's just so well done. It's so atmospheric in terms of you know you're not going to come across a great situation. And whilst they don't really linger on any of the other dead bodies that much, you know, you do see them sort of within the margins of the shot. But you just see Eugene up against a tree, and when asked how, you know, has he been bit? He's like, you know, he has.
Yeah.
And it leads to this moment where, you know, Joel just goes straight into protocol in a sense.
Yep.
It's like there are rules to obey if you've been bitten. And like we saw with the big attack on Jackson, that means essentially you're going to get put down.
Yeah.
And that's what he is sort of ramping up to do here to Eugene. But Ellie, because of Eugene's plea that he just wants to see Gail again, you know, please just take me to the outskirts of Jackson so I can see her and speak to her. She's there going, well, put out your hands, count to 10 slowly. He's not shaking. There's time.
Yeah.
There is this moment. And
from Marlene back in Fedra, back in episode 1 of season 1 as well. That's what Ellie would have learnt back in those times.
Do you know what I mean?
Long you have, yeah.
And as a result of that, she's like, we can grant him his dying wish. If we're going to have to kill him, we can let him see his wife for that one last time. And you know,
I think what I love about this as well is just that Eugene knows his fate. He absolutely knows he's going to die. You know, he's when Joel's questioning, are there any more infected out there? And he says, other than me, no. I'm the only infected here. I know I'm going to die. And then Ellie goes off to get the horses, making Joel promise to her that he will keep Eugene alive. He has agreed to allow Eugene to go back to the outskirts of Jackson to meet up with Gail, so that he can say his goodbyes. And Ellie makes Joel promise to her that he will keep him alive.
Yeah, I mean, they go through the plan. Look, we'll tie him up and we'll bring him back behind the horses. And you have Ellie just pleading with him, you know, for him to promise. Yeah. And he does. He tells her, you know, to go, as you say, get the horses. And then you have this moment, you know, where I just love the fact that, you know, comes out from the forest into a clearing. You've got this lake and the mountain vista.
Absolutely gorgeous.
And it's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. And you have Eugene saying, oh, it's so beautiful. And then it's like, oh, yeah, this is my final resting point in a place that it's beauty before the beast, in effect, of being put down, executed. But I do like that, you know, part of this conversation is not just he wants to speak to Gail for the last time, but he wants to hear what she has to say to him whilst he can still remember and comprehend it.
He wants the last thing to see to be the face of his wife, and he wants to hear her final comforting words to him because he is terrified. This is the whole thing about everybody's story mattering, you know. The character here, Eugene, is played by Joey Pantoliano, a very well-known actor who's been in so much stuff. And the reason why you get someone with that much experience in there to play a role that's only on screen for a couple of minutes is because he adds an extra layer to the character that you wouldn't get from somebody else that you've never heard of before, or you may not get, let's say. Here you've got Eugene, who has all the lived experience of being an older person with a wife where they've spent their entire lives together. And it's in every margin of every word that he says that he just wants to see his wife's face one more time and get her comforting words for him. It's just a beautiful moment. And you can tell that Joel's heart is breaking, but he has to do it in his mind. that is the protocol. That's what he agreed to by being in Jackson. And if they'd gotten too close and Gale had gotten bitten and then the infection had spread within Jackson and many people had died, It was all Joel's fault. That's the way he is. He is, to everybody else other than Ellie, he's uncompromising.
Yeah. And he's right to be risk adverse in this situation. He is holding the line. It's like you hold the line outside of Jackson. But it's just heartbreaking, and that tension between no, these are the rules. I'm really sorry. And it is hurting Joel, but he has the hard heart of having done this plenty of times. I mean, as you say, season 1, he was putting people who had been killed into the fire, you know? Yeah. So he is used to this kind of protocol since the Fedra in Boston from the first season.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things I also loved about the staging of the scene is as the camera is looking from behind the trees, we don't see Joel shoot the shot, kill Eugene. We do see Eugene's body afterwards, but we don't see him shoot the shot. We don't even hear it. We just see the birds flying up as he's obviously pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And then Ellie arrives, learning that Joel has gone against his promise. And then they, on the way back to Jackson with the body of Eugene behind the 2 horses, just like Joel's will be in a couple of months' time, they go back and he's trying to explain to Ellie, well, we're not going to tell Gale exactly what happened. We're going to tell her exactly what she needs to know and only that. And he makes up a story. He makes up a story that he tells her that firstly, her husband, Eugene, was very brave, that he chose to not put anybody in danger, and that he killed himself. All 3 of those things
are wrong. He loved her.
Yeah. That was true, though, of course.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wished he could say goodbye to you in person. He wasn't scared. Everything to sort of buffer Gale from the reality of the death of her husband. Yeah. And you just have Ellie coming straight out and contradicting everything that Joel says, and saying he promised us both, me and Eugene, you know, that he would come back to see you, and he shot him in the head, you know, and she mouths to him, you swore. And this is the kickoff point. This is, you know, it's that realization that the same expression, the same kind of vibe or feel or gut feeling or whatever around Joel promising something to be true, or something that he would hold to be true, keep true, ends off not being true. He goes against it.
And that's the moment that Ellie knows, That's the moment that Ellie absolutely knows that what happened in Salt Lake City is completely different to what he swore to her actually happened. All of the questions that she had at the start of this day, the 19th birthday, all the questions she had, she's right to have them because none of it was true.
And I think what's really, like, this whole scene is really, really difficult to watch as well, because you have Gale hugging into Joel because of what he said to her, and then recoiling when you have Ellie's sort of interjection and contradiction of everything Joel's just said.
Yep.
You know, she slaps him. It goes back to that moment earlier in the season of her saying to him that she hates him.
Yeah.
And the reason why.
Exactly.
And even though, you know, with time, not to say that she's necessarily forgiven him, but she knows that it was the protocol of Jackson.
She does, and what she's saying is if he had come back and done what Eugene had said, given him an opportunity to talk to his wife, and then even if Joel had shot Eugene in front of Gale when they came back to Jackson, I think Gale would have been okay with that because she knows the protocol.
Yeah.
But promising her husband that he'd bring her back and then shooting him in the head and promising Ellie, all those things are just wrong, you know, to her mind.
No, I totally agree.
But it's interesting that Ellie instantly flips on Joel. She doesn't want anybody else to go through the questioning that she's gone through for these 5 years either. So it's not really for Gale's benefit. It is for her. She is absolutely on fire here with the idea that Joel has lied to her for this long, and she gave him those multiple opportunities. If you remember back to season 1, and the reason why it was shown at the beginning of season 2 as the opening for this season, she gave him multiple opportunities to tell her what really happened and to swear to her that what he's telling her is the truth. And he did. And when he eventually swore to her, when he eventually said everything behind him said to her, I swear what I'm telling you is the truth, Ellie went, well, okay then. As long as you swear, then whatever questions I have, I'll put them to the back of my mind. Yeah? But here she is now, and it's been confirmed to her that he's been lying to her all of these years. He's been trying to make this beautiful life for the two of them, been trying to make these great birthdays for her every year, and been trying to keep her like his little baby girl the whole time. Yeah. Yet underneath it all, he's been lying to her about the situation. And that's it for Ellie and Joel for 9 months.
Yeah.
Let's go on to our final point 5. 9 months later, New Year's Eve, and the final confrontation between Joel and Ellie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this is really sort of, it's the bittersweet sort of start of reconciliation in that nick of time, but ultimately doomed given what happens on New Year's Day. But like that. I like the fact that scene where she comes back from the New Year's Eve party and he's on the veranda sort of playing the guitar. They then comes from his position and she comes back to effectively confront him on the questions that she's got, that we saw her jotting down on her 19th birthday.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that it's done effectively with the silence of Joel.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just such an emotionally charged scene. Like the two of them just knock it out of the park in terms of just how they portray this.
Yeah.
It's almost like Joel starts to do like small talk around Dina. And she's like, she just pushes back. She kind of, she recognizes this.
Yeah.
And she's like, you're such an a-hole in this moment. And she kind of brings it back to really the reason why she's there. You lied to me. And, I think I know, and I've known all the time.
Yeah.
But this is your last chance. What happened with the Fireflies? And, she goes through these series of questions around, were there other immune people there? And he shakes his head. Were there raiders actually attacking the hospital? And he shakes his head. Could they have made a cure? And he nods. And she says, did you? And she doesn't even ask the full question.
Yeah.
And he nods. And she's like, and Marlene?
Yeah.
And he nods. You see just in that moment, she's devastated with what she, in her heart of hearts, knew, but it is now being confirmed to her. And like, this was just so powerful. And, to the point of, the moth, Joel's kind of coming back, you would have died. I'd do it all of it over again, and he says, because she goes, because you're selfish, and he's, because I love you. But it's also just the fact that, she comes back with, you took it away from me, my purpose.
Yeah.
And everyone's, her
Away
purpose.
from me and everyone else,
The death that she has missed, that she has dodged by what Joel did, was her purpose. But also, everyone has lost the cure.
Yeah.
And I just like that, unbeknownst to Ellie, that's a realization that her and Abby have, that a cure was lost.
Yeah.
But Abby's known it for much longer. It's something that Nora refers back to her when she realizes you're the immune girl.
Yes.
This notion that it's real, that it was this real possibility.
That it's a possibility, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I think in this situation, it is Joel going, he knows, or at least he knew in his mind when he took the action he took, that it's a very real possibility they could have made a cure, but she would have been dead. And, we've talked about this conversation back and forth. Would it be possible? Is it possible? In that particular situation, would they have been able to create a cure out of Ellie? Well, it's not about the rational thought as to whether it could be possible and the scientific improbability of it happening. It's about the fact that Joel made his decision, knowing in the room that there's someone that he has been told can make a cure. He chooses to kill that person and kill everybody else around them just to save Ellie's life, and says to her he would do it again, no matter what, even if he has to pay the price, which is she will cut herself off from him. At least she's alive, and he has kept her that way. Yeah. That's what he says. It's an amazing distillation of everything that's been going on in their relationship over the course of the years and over the course of the 2 seasons. And it's fabulous.
It's just, it's phenomenal. I love as well then, if you understand one day when you have one of your own, I hope you do a little better than me. And me, as you say, that distillation of both echoing his dad's comments to him, to also it implicitly that this is all happened because I lost my daughter. Yeah. As well.
Yeah. Yep.
That's another huge driver here.
Yeah.
That as a father of a kid, but in this case, a daughter, very much like you.
Yeah. Who never got to Ellie's age as well,
And I think just the response then from Ellie, again, it's such great writing. It's like, I don't think I can forgive you for this. And there's just that pause, and it pans to, Joel's face. And I mean, Pedro Pascal, I don't know, he must have chucked Vic Vapor Rub in his eyes, the amount of welling up he's doing. Yeah. It's so phenomenal. Yeah. But I just like that little pause, that focus on him, and then she says, but I'd like to try. It's like an element of hope in a doomed situation.
Yeah.
That I now know the truth. I've probably known it for some time. You're a douchebag, an a-hole, all that kind of stuff. You're selfish. Yeah. I don't know whether I can forgive you, because forgiveness requires some level of understanding. It requires that empathy, but I'm willing to give it a go, and let's see how we get on.
And if you remember, the follow-up to this conversation actually happened in episode 2, when Ellie's woken up by Jesse to go out and patrol the next day after the New Year's party and after everything that happened. And all Jesse had seen was Joel and herself had a massive fight in front of the whole town, and Ellie's telling him, well, sometimes that happens, but I think we're on the path to being better again. And all Ellie wanted to do was go out and patrol with Joel that day. So this is the moment of hope between the two of them. But also more than that, this is the moment where Ellie reveals that she has grown into an adult over all of those years, when Joel has just wanted her to stay the same little girl that he's there to protect. She's become an adult. She's able to understand what happened. She's able to take on board, even though she may have known a little bit in the back of her head, she's able to take on board all of the choices that he made to get her here. And the choice that he made on that day, while she can't instantly forgive him, she's not going to fly off the handle now that she knows the truth. She's going to try and accept him now again. I'm going to try and build on that relationship, but she's not going to have the opportunity to do that.
No, exactly. The tragedy is that the hope is taken away by Abby.
Yeah.
But it's not known at that moment.
Yeah.
I think it's also, it confirms when Ellie says to Nora, I know. Yes. I know what he did. Yeah. Effectively, he's told me.
Exactly.
Through a series of shakes and nods.
And I do think that's what I really like about this story from The Last of Us. There's no world-breaking revelation in the story the way that it's told. There's no moment where you go, oh my God, the big cliffhanger this week is that Joel tells Ellie something that she never knew happened. Well, no, she knew it happened, but she's willing to forgive him for it. That's the big revelation, that she's grown to a point where even when he tells her the worst thing that happened, he's told her, and that in itself has built a bridge with her. But the big moment of the story is she can't continue to reconnect with this person that she loves because it was all taken away by Abby.
Yeah.
And then the episode ends, really cutting to present day in Seattle, with her in the rain returning to the theatre after whatever happened with Nora. We saw last week that she was going to get whatever information she was going to get out of Nora by torturing her. And now we can I guess next week we'll see what happened. We'll find out what information she got from Nora. But this has all led to explaining why Ellie is on such a vendetta against Abby.
Yeah, it's nice in a sense that it ends back in Seattle after this. To be honest, probably needed that because it was just so emotionally draining in terms of this crescendo of emotions. And I think, it's, as you say, it's a lesson in writing about complex situations and characters and relationships. And sometimes that's overlooked. And this is done in a way that is really the complexities of it. And I think with the flashback at the start, it's just adding and layering in new elements.
Exactly.
Which is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Any notes about the episode, John? Anything else we hadn't mentioned that you want to pull out and talk about?
No, just to say that Tommy's nephew calls him Mr. Grumpy.
Uncle Grumpy.
Uncle Grumpy.
Yes.
So, good night, Uncle Grumpy. I like that little touch there.
I think a couple of my nephews might call me that as well.
I like that little touch there. No, I don't think I do, actually. I probably missed a ton of stuff, but I mean, I do think it was really just so well done.
Yeah. Yeah. I had just a couple of little things that I wanted to mention. I love that moment in the space module or space capsule, the tear that comes down Pedro Pascal's face when he realizes he's done something even more special than he thinks he's done. How proud he is in that moment with Ellie, I think, is just absolutely beautifully captured. And then one other thing that I noticed on my second watch, I'm wondering if the decision that Joel made to kill Eugene, which isn't the point of the episode, of course, but he makes a decision to kill Eugene on the way home, I think. It's just when Eugene's walking in front of him and says, they make you cold, the cordyceps make you cold, and then goes, which way do I go from here? It's almost like the cordyceps are starting to infect his brain. As we know, that's how the cordyceps take over. They go through the human brain. Eugene is someone that's been here a very long time. We know he's the one that set up in the 7-Eleven, he set up the weed stash there, right? So he's been down all of these paths all the time. And I wonder if in that moment when Eugene's saying, which way do I go? And Joel says, go to the right. It's almost like Joel's made a decision going, that's a sign. He's already turning. I'm going to send him down here, kill him before anything bad happens.
I think that's a really interesting point. I think it's one... Yeah, I think that could be right. Yeah.
Because I do think Joel acts on instinct a lot of the time, so he may not have been actually lying to Ellie in that moment when he says to her that he's going to keep Eugene alive. He doesn't go out of his way to keep Eugene alive, but he could have killed him a couple of seconds after Ellie left, if that's all he was waiting for, was just for Ellie to go. But the minute he saw a sign that Eugene was turning, it looks like that's the moment he chose to kill him.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, yeah.
There you go. Excellent. So overall, John, what did you think of the penultimate episode of season 2 of The Last of Us?
I absolutely thought this was fantastic. I really, really loved it. I'd give it 5 Barney birthday surprises out of 5.
Barney birthday surprises?
The dinosaur.
Oh,
Barney.
Very good. A man and a dinosaur.
Yeah. Absolutely. I loved this from top to tail. Even though it was a toughie, I think it's a real tour de force of exploring this relationship.
Yeah.
I loved as well how the relationship just goes through the generations back to Joel and Tommy as kids in that flashback. So the culmination of what's led Joel on this path to lie and so on, to the point where he is confronted to tell the truth in silence, so that in a sense Ellie doesn't hear him say it. It's just so interesting. So many great performances here. In particular, Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. But also I think Eugene here, played by Joey Pantoliano, and Gail, played by Catherine O'Hara. Just so like well done.
Yeah.
Real moments of tension, real moments of confrontation, of strife, and I like how it just, it goes from these good times of happy birthday kiddo, happy times through to just this, gradual divergence and fracture, with the death of Eugene, but the death of a promise that she realizes is part of Joel's makeup in a sense,
and just that return to hopefulness at the end as well.
Absolutely, and the return to hopefulness, because I just think it's a real intricate thing of like the forgiveness side of it. I think this idea of the step by step that you do a little better than me, all those things are just really ignored a lot of the time. Yeah. And it actually adds a huge amount of complexity to how people behave, and why they do certain things. Yeah. That they're not the perfect human being that is like this, that, and the other, Absolutely. But they are trying, and they might not be perfect, but this leads them to sometimes hurt the people that they do love because of how they're trying to navigate their own way through, their own feelings, life, society, whatever it might be. Yeah. But in the end, at heart, there are good intentions there. And I think on the forgiveness side, I just think that's really interesting to hear a character say, I don't know if I can, but I'm willing to try, because it is, I think from my side, my parents always said, well, try and try again. But if you don't do it, or if you can't do it, fine, but at least you've tried.
Exactly.
So I think...
Unlike stupid Yoda, says there is no try.
Yeah, but that's Yoda. I've never liked that character. So I think, shock revelation. I think, it's just a really interesting kind of rule, I guess, that is... you just don't hear more of, I guess, in shows like this. It's just, she kills him. It would be that Joel gets killed by her because she can't deal with it or whatever.
Or just gets really angry and never speaks to him again.
Now, in the end, it's Abby that's killed him, and that's just the tragedy of this and the tragedy of their relationship, of what's come before with him and his father, but also with what happens to his daughter Sarah, and ultimately what happens once this reconciliation, this hope is seeded, is the tragedy. So, absolutely loved this episode, from performances, the writing, the direction. 5 Barney birthday surprises out of 5.
Fantastic. Oh, after that, John, I definitely need a drink. Let's get down to the World's End pub quiz for our penultimate question for the season, John.
It certainly is, fellow quizzers and fellow survivors. Yes. We are on the penultimate episode, and so we're on to question number 6, which is, what 2 flavours of cake does Joel get for Ellie's 15th and 17th birthdays? Yes.
Fantastic. An easy question. We needed an easy question for this one.
I think so.
So for Eli's birthday and for Ellie's birthday, what type of cake is it?
Yes,
and
indeed.
Just simple ones. Don't want to get all the ingredients. Just what we saw on screen and what was mentioned on screen. John, do you want to give us the question one more time?
Yes. What 2 flavours of cake does Joel get for Ellie's 15th and 17th birthdays?
Fantastic. That's your 6th question of 7. Next week, you'll get the 7th question. And after that, send us in your correct answers to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and you could be in with a chance of getting a copy of The Last of Us Part 2 on PC or PlayStation, or an Amazon voucher, depending on what's better for you. Looking forward to hearing your answers.
Yes. Good luck, fellow quizzers and fellow survivors. But moving on from the World's End pub quiz, we move to our feedback. First up on email, we have John Daniel, who says, hello, survivors. I have to confess, this might be the first post-apocalyptic show I've given a real chance. Right. I think I didn't want to imagine a world like this, so I avoided it. I realise I have been missing out. This show is a masterclass in characters and storytelling. I think the single tear going down Joel's face in the space capsule says it all for me. And this episode, so much love, so much heartbreak. When Ellie says he lied to you, he lied to us, I think I may have forgotten to breathe for an long, long time. I've been listening to the official podcast too, and it sounds like they're well into what the story will be in season 3. So I'm not expecting much in the way of resolution in the finale, but I'm certain it will be gut-wrenching. See you next week. John from Chicago. Excellent, John. Great to get your thoughts on this show and this episode. Absolutely. And I could not agree with you more. Yeah. So much love, so much heartbreak.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we know we're not going to get the entire story resolved next week, and it sounds like we might even get another season after that, but that doesn't mean there isn't going to be something big happening at the end of next week. I feel like it might be a big cliffhanger about what happens, or a big story moment before it moves on to the next season. So I'm concerned about next week. I do think it's going to be gut-wrenching, as you say, John. I think it's going to be a bit of a dark ending for this season, since we know a third season's coming back. So they don't have to pull their punches and expect that we're not going to turn up for it. We will turn up for a third season. But yeah, it's been an amazing show. It's interesting. This is the first post-apocalyptic show. I think I've been such a big fan of shows like The Walking Dead, which went on for 12 years with multiple spin-offs, that have had a lot of post-apocalyptic stories. We even covered Why the Last Man on here, which is another post-apocalyptic comic book show. So
I quite like a good old post-apocalyptic show. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's just the idea of taking society away and seeing what people are like without all the trappings of the day-to-day life is a really interesting idea for a show. When done well, of course.
I mean, even like Fallout, you know?
Yeah, that's another great one, yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of them.
There certainly is. Thanks so much, John.
Yeah, thanks, John.
We also have some feedback in from Philippe over on Facebook, who says, is it humanly possible to cry more than I did watching this episode? The museum scene was chef's kiss. And it's great that they had Eli realize it was a lie through the Eugene situation, rather than by having them go back to Salt Lake. That's a really good point, you know, having Ellie go back to, I love that you called her Eli there as well. Very good, Philippe. But having Ellie go back to Salt Lake City and investigate the situation would be a standard way of doing it, wouldn't it? In some of their shows, she'd go back and find remnants of, you know, the battle that went on, and find out that all the bullets came from Joel's gun or something. You know, that would be a way to find out. But here, it's done in the conversation between them, and in her realization that he's lied to her again, using the same way that he lied to her in the past, you know. It's a really interesting way to do it.
No, definitely. And Felipe, I totally agree. Museum scene was a chef's kiss. I think the veranda scene was a chef's kiss.
Which is brilliant.
As well. Just for different reasons. And just sort of at those different ends, you know, or towards those different ends of the spectrum of, you know, sheer happiness to sheer just heartbreak. So I think that lots of chef's kisses in this.
Absolutely. And of course, these are the final scenes that Pedro Pascal would have filmed for the show as well. I think in behind the scenes stuff that we watched, we saw him saying goodbye to the crew and the people behind the scenes in the scenes in the museum. So it looks like they filmed that museum scene as one of the final times that Pedro Pascal was with the group. So at least they left it with a happy moment to film with the cast and the rest of the crew. That those moments in the museum might have been the final things that Pedro filmed. That makes a lot more sense than having him do all of those really gut-wrenching scenes as his final scenes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Great stuff. Thanks, Felipe.
Yeah, thanks, Felipe.
Thanks so much. If you want to send in your feedback to us, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. We will be doing one more episode, of course, on The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 7 next week. And we will be, of course, wrapping up the season as well. So if you haven't got any thoughts to us throughout the season so far, we'd love to hear from you for that finale wrap-up episode as well. But thanks so much again for joining us for this episode. We'll speak to you again next week.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow survivors, for joining us for this penultimate podcast on the penultimate episode of The Last of Us Season 2. But until next time, of course, keep watching, keep listening, and of course, keep surviving.
That didn't suck.
Good night, Uncle Grumpies.
Bye.
Bye.